Hey, and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth. I'm your host, Rebecca Robertson, and today we're going to be talking about what would I do if I had to start again financially at 35. Hi, and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I'm an independent financial advisor and wealth coach. I'm the director of Evolution Financial Planning, who is also our sponsor for today's show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and review this episode. With your help, we'll reach more people who can benefit from the show. Quick one before we get back to it. If these conversations are landing for you, we've made something to help you go deeper. It's a short quiz. You answer a few questions and it tells you where to focus, then builds you a playlist of every relevant episode so you're not hunting through the whole back catalogue. Investing, divorce, business, there are 9 areas to land in. The link's below. So I'm 40, so that was only 45, sorry. So that was only 10 years ago. So the anyone listening that is, older than myself and feeling that it's just too late, it's never too late. There are lots of things that can be done. For those that are listening that are younger, well, this is a great opportunity because this is some real hindsight stuff. And those that are at the age of 35, then so this works for everybody, right? But there's always this sort of shame and guilt with finances where we're beating ourselves up about shoulda, woulda, coulda, things I should have done already or wished I'd done already in hindsight. So we're going to be focusing around some positive things that can be done and what we could do differently. So let's start. Now, the first thing is to how you're feeling around being overwhelmed, because a lot of this can feel like a massive to-do list already in probably a really busy life. And so what we need to look at is take at least 1 or 2 takeaways that you can act upon that are simple and straightforward for you to do. So try not to get overwhelmed. If there's this really long list, being overwhelmed just means procrastination, which means you won't take any action, and therefore what was the point? So the reason I do this podcast is to give people proactive things that they can go away and do and make a difference to their lives. That's the purpose. So what I really want you to notice is the sort of key thing, the priority for you to go away and action, and give yourself a sort of a deadline to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this by the end of the week, or I'm going to make sure I've spoken to X, Y, and Z by the end of the week, and I'm going to have this organised by the end of the month. Give yourself some sort of milestones and some deadlines, and try not to get too overwhelmed. Because one of the main things is looking at your priorities. So you need to get clarity about where you are. And sometimes that can be the hardest part, because building that picture, it's a bit like, for me, baking a cake, and I have to read the instructions and then list out all the ingredients. I just get really overwhelmed. It's like, that's a lot for me to take in, so I just don't do anything. Whereas if someone said to me, look, let's just break this down bit by bit, and actually, you've got eggs, you've got milk, you've got water. All you need is icing sugar, or you just need some more baking powder. I go, okay, great, I can go and get the baking powder. That's no problem. It's manageable. So try and see it like that. Try and break it down a little bit and prioritize where you can. So clarifying where you are can be sometimes the most overwhelming, because you've got to build the picture. You've got to work out what the ingredients are that you've got and where you need to break things down further. So that first step is understanding your numbers. So the first point is income. So actually, when I speak to clients and I say, what's your net or gross income? People won't know. They don't sometimes know how much goes into their bank account, not because it changes, but they just don't recall it off the top of their head because they're not looking at their bank statements in that way every day. So just by looking at your pay slip and understand your pay slip, has it got abbreviations on there? Do you know how much is going in national insurance? Do you know how much is going in tax? Do you know if you have a personal allowance, if you're using it or not? If you're based on your earnings, that you'll lose it. If you earn over 100 grand a year, it starts to reduce down. Do you know how much is going into your pensions? How much are your work paying into your pensions? What's your personal contribution? So just working out your numbers, understanding your income is the first step. So just grab your pay slip or just look at your bank statement and say, I know that I get paid in number, every month. That's the first step. Outgoings. Now, that can be a bigger tricky thing. And I'm not just talking about outgoings as fixed expenditure. So that's things like your rent or mortgage, or your insurances, your gas, your electric, council tax. They're the things that we know and expect. They're just, but we know, we can list those out. We can look at our bank statements. We can list those out. The tricky part becomes the sundry items. Some things are more important than others depending on your lifestyle. So for some people, they might have car finance. That's a fixed expenditure. They might have a credit card that they've spent maybe too much on, and they've got a minimum payment to make, but they're wanting to overpay to clear that down. They might have other debts that they may have, other loans or credit cards they need to be paying for. But it's also then the takeaways or the shopping trips and going out with friends and the meals out, all those sort of extra items, online shopping, the shopping trips in general. In my case, I have a fascination with buying more rugs, horse rugs. I seem to have every rug of every kind of every colour, and it gets delivered at home and everyone's like, another rug's arrived. We all have our poison, so to speak. So understanding your numbers when it comes to your core outgoings and your regular commitments and some of those sort of spending habits is the second step. Now that in itself can be quite tricky because one month might be different to the next. You know, the summer holidays is different compared to Christmas, compared to having a big birthday in the family. And so sometimes it's good to do a 2 or 3 month period and look at those expenditures, look at those outgoings and say, okay, what am I regularly, habitually doing on a regular basis? The second step when it comes to that, though, is looking at the longer term. So it might be, okay, well, I know how many birthdays I've got in our family every year. I know I have Christmas. There can be things that you need to sort of more annually or quarterly need to allow for. And then therefore you can say, okay, well, let's just say it's going to cost me £300 a quarter. I know I need to put £100 a month for that quarter, for that expense. And that's a good example of something like your servicing on your car, for example, which we know is once a year, but are we putting the money aside for it annually, monthly, so that we can pay for it on that annual bill and not then have to put it on a credit card? So understanding your outgoings as a general rule can be the first and actually one of the most trickiest parts. And then the clarity once you get that clarity, however, it does remove some of that overwhelm. But it's a bit like going up a hill, that initial effort when you first get started can be a little bit tricky, and putting the time aside to do that. There's some great apps out there, don't get me wrong, but quite often if you're using some apps, they're data mining, so they're looking to take your data. And other apps, whether it's like your bank app, they segregate and categorize outgoings, but they're quite general, just like shopping. Well, is that petrol, or is that food shopping, or is that horse rugs? So it doesn't give you sometimes enough clarity. I don't recommend putting your bank statements into ChatGPT or AI of any kind, simply because you don't know where that information's going. And from a security perspective, fraudsters are always finding ways to get banking information from people. You ring your bank up and you say, mention some of your most recent bank transactions. Something as simple as that. But not only that, once you put your information into AI, you just don't know where it's going, not just from a marketing data mining perspective, but also some much more sinister things. We don't really understand it enough for anyone to be recommending that. And I have heard people online recommend that. Some really big names recommend doing that, and I certainly don't. I think personally it is just a bit of a manual job. But once you do have a little bit of an oversight, you can have a budget planner. You can use I've got actually an Accelerating Your Wealth planner. You can buy it on Amazon. So if you wanted more of a manual writing things down, if you go onto Amazon and search for Wealth Accelerator Planner, you can find that on there. It's also on my website, rebeccarobertson.co.uk. So if you are more of a stationery, post-it notes, highlighters, pens, write things down, then that's a really good tool. Alternatively, we have got a budget planner. I don't believe it's accessible on any of our sites. So you'd need to email me at rebecca@rebeccarobertson.co.uk, and then I can email you our Excel spreadsheet. Doesn't cost anything. You won't be added to an email list. It's just if you want it, it's there. And you can then list out. So my spreadsheet has essential and non-essential spending. So you can list out and categorize like an average over 3 months, cost of coffee, dog walker, that kind of thing, and it averages it out and totals it into the main spreadsheet for you. If you're somebody that is not sure what to do with their finances, maybe you're working and you're not sure what to do with the bonuses you've got at work, or maybe you started a business and you've got profits and you're not sure what you should be doing to enable you to A, pay yourself more, or B, potentially retire earlier. Maybe you're somebody that's thinking about, do I overpay on the mortgage? You've received some inheritance. You've got lots of questions around your finances on what to do next. Then check out Evolution Financial Planning, who are regulated independent financial advisors and financial planners that can help you make some of those big decisions in life. Then you can look at it more clearly. So once you then have a clear understanding of where you are, and you've broken that all down, then you can sort of look at it face on, and you mustn't judge yourself, right? Then it's time to look at, okay, what are the foundations in place? What things are good? And it's really good exercise. I say, okay, have I got my emergency fund? Yes, I have, tick, great. If you haven't, that's your first port of call. What does that look like? That would look like more of, looking at your outgoings and saying, okay, well, emergency fund should be at least 3, well, depends on how you feel. Some people are 6, but 3 months outgoings is a general rule. For some people, they might just say, okay, well, the first step is to find 1 month's outgoings, just to have 1 month backup, and that's okay. It's then looking at your insurances and what you're paying for, not just the cat insurance and dog insurance, making sure you've got the right insurances in place, what your excess is, but it's also looking at what life cover I have in life insurance. Does that match your mortgage? The income protection, does that match what you're getting paid through work? And then if I was off sick, is there a gap? Would my savings be able to support me? Not everyone wants to exacerbate all their savings if they were sick. And just looking at what the stability is, the tick in the boxes are some of the basic foundations. So for some people who are, they're having children, they may be going part-time, all these kind of things, their life changes are going on. They can't really be thinking about investing or pensions. They're just looking at, okay, well, how do I allow for this maternity leave to work? How do I make it work that I can go part-time? And if you've got some of these foundations in place and you've got these backup in place, that hindsight is a much better place to be. It gives you more options. A really simple example of that is my daughter when she needed to leave her apprenticeship. She's now in a new apprenticeship, which I've spoke about on other shows. And she saved up enough for her second year's car insurance. The first year she was paying it herself. But by saving that money, she's now going to have to pay monthly. But it meant that she could have 3 months off while she was looking for something else. And having that backup money she saw the value in that. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to leave that previous job, and she would have been sort of stuck doing what she was doing, and she was really quite unhappy. And I see that happen with a lot of people. So having this backup, having these foundations can be such a strong way to be able to make some other leaps or other sort of shifts in the future. Start investing. So a lot of people, I've spoke about this in some other shows, just something as small as £100 a month can really make a big difference in that long-term projection. And even, like I say, even it hasn't got to be a big amount. You're probably already investing through your pension. So if you look at that income, that pay slip, look at how much you're going into your pension. Have you got old pensions elsewhere? What are they doing? How's that working? And just have some real consistency over the analysing and keeping an eye on these things. I know myself, they end up going in a drawer, you forget about them, it's not important, let's book that holiday, let's get a new car, let's live life. You forget about those sort of quite boring things that just eventually you get round to, but we have to start looking at them more seriously. And I think that would be, most people I speak to who are older, that's one of their, I wish I'd done this sooner. I wish I'd spoken to you sooner. I wish I found you sooner. I'm so glad I found you. I'm glad I've got this support now, but I wish I had it sooner. So as we're talking about, the things that we would maybe I wish I'd done in my 30s kind of thing. This is that is one of the main key things, is looking at what you have got in place and making sure you're maximizing it, because that consistency over time has a massive impact. And just waiting until later, I've explained on other shows that if you're not keeping up with inflation, or you're not keeping up with the returns of money, you're missing out on thousands of pounds, which that's how wealthy people make money. So why aren't we all doing it? Prioritizing long-term wealth, so pensions versus ISAs. So from a high-level overview, pensions you can get tax relief on, so the money that goes in potentially is sort of topped up with tax relief depending on how it goes in. Simple version. I have done other shows on that. And ISAs, you're not taxed at the other end, so you don't get that tax relief going in, but there's no capital gains tax, there's no income tax at the other end. With pensions, you get a tax-free lump sum of 25%. The rest of it, 75% of it, is then taxed at your marginal rate of tax, depending on how much you're taking and when you're taking it. So prioritising those kind of investments. ISAs can be great for shorter term, not necessarily long term. They could be like 5-year plans. Pensions are obviously for those longer term retirement plans. And making decisions intentionally. So you're sort of intentionally saying, okay, this is where my finances are and this is how much I'm going to put aside for this. And then I talk about doing like pension birthdays, or having financial birthdays, where each year you say, okay, on this day each year I'm going to review what I've done previously. And you can maybe have a date with a friend, book it in the diary, clear your diary, have nothing else going on. You sit at the kitchen table and you get it all out and you have it in front of you. And then it's not just a reaction of, oh, my car insurance has come up for renewal, and then you've forgotten about your life insurance. It's then you are reviewing it on a conscious basis. So thinking beyond just earning more money, it's about being practical with the money that you have got as well. Sometimes that can be just as impactful, although getting a bonus at work or earning more commission or having a second job can't hurt. So that's real sort of some of the basics really when it comes to understanding your finances, know your outgoings, build the strong foundations, look at what insurances you have in place as backup, start investing, looking at those longer term and short term plans, and just build some basic simple framework around having security of cash and protection, that growth of investment in pensions. And then later on, you can then start talk about optimizing from a tax and strategy perspective, or tax planning, inheritance tax, etc. So it's looking at the mindset as I'm talking, like think about how am I feeling about the things that I'm saying? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Does this feel like me baking a cake scenario where I completely don't really want to do this? What is going to stop you from moving forward? And so looking at that shift of mindset and saying, okay, well, what do I need to change to make this work for me? How can I set myself up to be successful with this? So it's not about the perfection. It's just about making those small progress each step of the way. So you're building that confidence through those small actions bit by bit. And letting go of that feeling of I'm behind, I haven't done this, there's no point, and looking at, okay, what small baby steps can I move forward? So get really clear on your full financial picture, build up emergency funds, start investing or start reinvesting or topping up your investments, and commit to reviewing your finances on at least an annual basis, if not quarterly or monthly. Obviously, you can follow us for more financial and wealth accelerating tips. So do check out our other shows. And we've got many more previous shows that you can listen to and more to come. But I hope you found this session really helpful. If you are looking to review your financial position, our sponsor is Evolution Financial Planning, which I'm an independent financial advisor and director of, and they sponsor our podcast. And if you want to understand a little bit more about where some of those gaps are, you can go to our website, evolutionfinancialplanning.co.uk, go to financial resources, and there actually might be a link in our show notes anyway, and then you can fill out what's called a financial wellbeing quiz, and it will allow you to understand where you are with your overall financial planning and your financial position around insurances and pensions and investments and wills, and if you want to book a free financial complimentary overview of that, then you're more than welcome to do so. I hope you found today's show interesting, and I look forward to seeing you on some more shows. Thanks a lot. Take care. Thank you for joining us today at Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do subscribe and let us know in the comments any of your thoughts.